Welcome back to another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. The dynamic duo is back again. Allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Perri.
And I'm Rashawn.
This is another episode of WCP Weekly.
Yes.
Where we kind of chime in between the episodes with interviews and let you guys catch up with us and current events and what's happening in the watch world. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
It's been a busy couple of weeks since our last episode, and we're going to catch up and see. I mean, we've been separated for some time and we've gone to different events and stuff, so it'll be interesting to kind of see your perspective. And I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on with me. But before we get into that, obviously we have to have our honorary wrist check.
Yes.
As is tradition, Mr. Smith, what are you wearing?
So I am wearing a watch that I haven't shared for a bit.
Okay.
The Ulysse Nardin Neurona.
Respect.
Definitely a watch that I wanted to wear, fitting with my outfit. So
Yeah, sure. I think there's some kind of like cue that we both got today.
yes, always a method to the madness. I love this watch, being one of 29 pieces globally, really kind of separates you from the rest. There's people that love UN. There's some people that have mixed feelings about UN,
To say the least.
But what really drew me to the watch was the idea of sustainability.
Okay.
Knowing that brands are kind of moving in that space and being conscious of the materials that they use. So using a proprietary carbon called carbonium, they have infused that material with some recycled fishing nets to create a part of the case and the strap. At the sub dial at 6 o'clock, it has the Neurona logo, which of course is a brand very similar to like Patagonia, Fjällräven, et cetera, where they're more for outdoors, camping, and kind of testing their fabrics to the extreme. This watch just really speaks to me, and I'm glad to own it.
It's a fire piece, man. I think we were joking off camera. You said I called that the Target watch.
Yeah.
I got to go back and look at which episode I've referenced that because I remember referring to the Nautilus as because you were wearing that to Target. And I thought that was kind of wild. So I might have meant that might have been more appropriate. But
Yes.
Nonetheless, it's a cool timepiece. I am a fan of Ulysse Nardin. I think they make cool watches. That's one of the cooler divers that they have. We actually went to an announcement event for that piece a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's fire piece. I'm glad you still own it. It's also, it's if you know, a lot of people aren't familiar with that brand. They're not super mainstream, but definitely well known amongst watch collectors and a brand with a lot of history. They've been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
I am not wearing a new watch. I am repeating a watch. I am wearing my Rolex GMT Master 2 Sprite, Lucky
Yes.
Lefty.
Yes.
I am wearing it on my left hand. I also happen to be left-handed, but I still wear all my watches on my left hand, and so that's not going to change. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this watch as much as I actually do. This is the only modern Rolex that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I've owned a few. They haven't stayed in the collection very long.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my modern Rolexes have moved out, exited to friends and other collectors that I know because it just wasn't. It wasn't a me thing. I think with Rolex, I really do enjoy vintage.
Mm-hmm.
The only modern exception that I thought I would make, or I believe I would, because I got to borrow this watch from someone for a little while, would be a modern Daytona.
Yes.
Just because the proportions and the shape of the watch, I feel like still closely resembles the Daytonas of the past.
Yes.
And so it feels familiar in that sense, and I enjoy it. But this, I think I enjoy it for another reason. It doesn't feel like a Rolex because everything is turned upside down.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
No, yeah, it's one of those pieces where like not only the orientation of the watch kind of mess with you, but like functionality it does. Because if I have to set the time, I have to wind it, I'm forced to turn this watch upside down.
Yes.
In a way where it would match, normal non-destro Rolex watches.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, it does like another thing with it experientially that I think is kind of cool. It's kind of hard to put words to it, but it's just a feeling that I get. And I'm like, you know what? This is funky. It's weird enough. It doesn't feel like Rolex. And for that reason, I kind of like it. So I think this is going to stay in the collection. Yeah, that's that on that. So shout out to Rolex one time.
Yeah.
This episode of WCP is sponsored by Bezel, a trusted marketplace for buying and selling watches. With over 18,000 and counting watches listed from both private sellers and professional dealers, you have your pick of the litter from brands like Rolex, AP, Patek, and more. Bezel is one of the highest rated marketplaces for watches. Inside the Bezel app, you can make offers on watches, buy them outright, bid at auction, all with confidence knowing each timepiece is authenticated by an in-house team of experts. For more information, visit getbezel.com or search Bezel in the App Store and download the app today. Okay, so getting into things. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'd like to first start with an event that you attended last week.
Mm-hmm.
Bulova.
Yes.
Shout out to our friends at Bulova.
Yes, yes.
Shout out to TJ.
Yes.
And
Michael.
And Michael. And so Bulova, they put out a documentary. And actually, you brought me a gift. Here's the poster.
Yes.
So we'll share that. We'll get some footage. And it's celebrating their 150th anniversary, which is next year, 2025.
Yes.
And it's called America Telling Time. We got the email for this. I was really pleased. I was also surprised that they were doing this. I think it's exactly what they should be doing.
Yes.
We did an event with Bulova and an episode with them. And, I learned so much from Michael just about the history.
Yes.
And even in some of the research that I was doing, that I feel like they should be telling their story more and more.
I agree.
And this seemed like, an event that was geared towards doing just that.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is I did speak to some people who attended the event, and I kept hearing a lot of the same things. I didn't know Bulova did this. I didn't know Bulova did that. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend.
Yes.
But please tell me about the experience. If you can sort of paint the picture.
Yes.
Because I saw a lot of photos.
Yes.
It looked like a star-studded event.
It was.
A who's who in the watch world.
Yes.
What was it like entering the building?
Oh, it was great entering the building. It kind of felt very like ball-like, gala-like. Some famous faces, some new faces as well, and some veterans in there, which, of course, a few of them were featured in the film or had a hand in making the film. And it was just a great time, It's always a good time when there's open bar.
That's a fact.
So open bar, getting to know the who's who, connecting the dots.
Hudson Whiskey?
They didn't have Hudson there.
Oh, really? Okay.
But they had some other goodies, a lot of top shelf.
Okay, respect.
So that was pretty fun. But it was great to just connect with so many people that we hadn't seen in such a time because everyone's like shaking and moving. And so the film was about an hour. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, but the director, his name is Michael Kaliba.
Okay.
But it was great to kind of see his perception of time and what he thought was very meaningful in the film.
Is he a watch guy?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So we actually did a film a few years back called Keeping Time.
Okay.
And so he featured a lot of independent watchmakers. So it was like DeFore, Journe, Max Busser, and I think one other independent watchmaker, or it might have just been those three only. I definitely need to see the film, especially after seeing what he did with Bulova.
Right.
Because he was able to give people an insight to their past, present, and future, adding in all the elements of not only watchmaking, but their, I want to say, impact on pop culture. So you've seen cameos from, Mark Anthony, of course, Muhammad Ali, a few other, notables in there as well.
Okay.
Which I felt like the film gave an insight as to Bulova actually like being here and being
here like in New York?
Being here in New York, yes.
Okay.
And being here in New York and then taking their technologies, designs, and influence to kind of bridge that gap with their Japanese partners and citizen group.
Interesting.
So they spoke of like their New York heritage, but they also embraced working with their Japanese partners as well.
I think for those that don't know, and I can't wait to see, I can't wait to see this film. I know they're still doing screenings.
Yeah. So they're doing screenings in 3 major cities.
Okay.
New York, the West Coast, somewhere in California, and I think they're gonna take it over to Asia. It was really, really cool to also see like the cameos and also people's take on how Bulova has kind of like even shaped them as watch collectors.
Yeah.
There was a guy, I don't remember his name, but he has the greatest collection of Bulova watches.
Wow.
From like the inception all the way to
That's
where
the
they
thing
are.
about brands like Bulova, and specifically speaking to Bulova, they have like a cult following.
Yes.
It's like when you get wrapped up in a brand like that with all that history, you find these people that are just like dedicated. And so much so that oftentimes they even end up educating the brand on things that they may have lost sight of and didn't know or remember.
And that's and that's a good point, because he was there to kind of speak on the history of these watches. So like there was 2 ones that stood out, which was it was like Bulova's first like dive watch.
The mil-spec?
No, it wasn't the mil-spec. It was a watch that was introduced in the early 50s, just around the same time as like the Submariner. And they didn't have a screw down crown, but it had like this interesting like rubber kind of like crown guard.
Okay.
Which protected the crown. And he was saying that this watch is still waterproof till this day.
Be careful, Periscope might be watching.
But
might debunk all of that.
Well, so it was very, to your point, right? The film also was like subtly controversial, because then they spoke about having one of the first timepieces to actually go to space.
Yes, I do know that story.
So of course they weren't a part of like the moon landing, but they did have a watch that did go to space.
Yeah.
And of course, we know...
I think a Bulova watch was on that same mission with the first Omega Speedmaster.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
Because we know that during that time of NASA looking to have a specific timepiece to go on this, on these Apollo missions, Bulova had actually submitted watches as well.
It's funny because talking about Periscope, I think there was a story that came out recently from him.
Yes.
Maybe not a story, but more of a rumor that Omega bribed or fleeced or like solicited somebody. Like they paid someone.
Really?
Yes, to get that watch on there.
Really?
Like they paid someone at NASA to like make this a thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any truth to that.
Right.
It was like Instagram stories that Periscope posted. I think we'll have to have him on the show sometime.
Yes.
Because I think people want to hear from him.
I would love to hear that story.
Yeah, it might get us blacklisted, but but Bulova has a lot of like interesting little tidbits like that in their history. You're talking about like the first company, period, to like ever do an advertisement on radio.
Yes.
The first company to ever do a video commercial for a product. They did special equipment for NASA.
Yes.
On some of those space shuttles.
Yes.
They even have equipment on the moon.
Yes.
Like just crazy, crazy things that like, it's not like widely known about this brand. And even when I spent my time with Michael Benavente, and for anyone watching and listening, we have him we had him on the show. You should definitely go back in the catalog and find that episode, because there's just a lot of like great history and information about this brand that also happens to be like a New York brand. This is a New York watch company.
Yes.
Right? And not just any watch company, like Bulova revolutionized the watch industry.
Yes.
Just in terms of like manufacturing and assembling watches as well, right? Like just crazy, crazy history.
When you talk about manufacturing too, I wanted to tap into a bit of their philanthropy, because Bulova had actually opened a school.
Yeah, they opened a watchmaking school for vets.
For veterans.
Yeah.
And they do have a timepiece that commemorates that, and the proceeds go to continuing that initiative. And I found it to be impactful, right? Because when you speak of brands, and it was funny, on the way to the studio, I was thinking about how impactful brands could be, because what's happening is everyone speaks of philanthropy.
Sure.
And everybody speaks about how they give back, right?
Right.
But your end consumer doesn't get to see that, right, in real life. You know, you speak of like, you know, you take a brand like Rolex, where, you know, they're providing sight to, you know, to the blindness epidemic in Africa, right? Or, you know, providing clean water and those kind of things, right, in those places. But at the same time, we understand that it exists, and it's well documented, and you can find that, but we don't see how much that genuinely impacts the cause.
It's tough to see it at the ground level as a consumer. One might argue consumers probably don't really care. They just want the watch.
Yes.
I definitely think that's true with Rolex. I don't think anyone, I don't want to say anyone, I don't think most Rolex fanboys care about Rolex's philanthropy. If they knew that Rolex was like Mr. Moneybags and pocketing everything, they could care less.
Yes.
As long as they got the watch. But there is definitely like growing interest and concern on behalf of, you know, a segment of consumers that want to know that their money is going towards, you know, positive initiatives and can have a positive impact, especially in a business where we know that there's a lot of waste being generated. I definitely give credit to the companies that do it well. Shout out to Oris. We know they're one of them.
Yes.
And it's interesting to hear that that's something that Bulova actually is, you know, involved in as well. What did you think about the movie overall?
Oh, I think it was shot beautifully.
Yeah.
Cinematically, it was great. Everyone that was interviewed definitely was well knowledgeable and had an emotional connection. And you can really, really see that in, you know, these guys sharing their story.
Yeah.
And how they tied into the brand. I thought the film was too short. An hour, really? I was like, I want more.
It was just an hour.
It was just an hour. And like, but the thing was, as short as it was very clear and concise. And I think for people like us that nerd out and are historians and appreciate these kind of things, we're like, I can go on and I can, like, give me 10 hours. I don't want 1 hour. I want 10.
You felt like you wanted more.
I felt like I wanted more.
I mean, that could be a good thing too. You know what I mean? That means that the film was impactful. I mean, I can't wait to see it. I love the company, and I have a great deal of adoration for them, not only because of the history, but because of the people that work there.
Yes.
I'll need to figure out how I'm going to see this film. Maybe TJ can fly me to the next screening.
Yeah.
First class on behalf of Bulova, so we can tell some time. All right, next up, I've been kind of busy.
Yeah.
A couple of things have happened. I did get to visit AP House recently and check out some really, really cool watches, pieces that were released earlier this year that I hadn't had the opportunity to handle, which is always a treat. Anytime you're invited, if you've ever been to any AP house, but in particular the one in New York, it's just oozes luxury.
Yes.
The team that they have there, really, really just incredible people. They know how to make you feel at home. Just constant, like the best service. Food is always off the hook. The drinks are always amazing. Shout out to Claudia and Paul for the invitation.
Yes.
And I got to check out the new offshore, the blue one.
It's dope.
Which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
43 millimeter, wears a lot smaller.
Rubber bezel.
Yes, it's got the rubber blue bezel, the mega tapisserie dial. Fantastic. I mean, you know what to expect, when you handle this watch, but executed masterfully.
Yeah.
The frosted AP watches were a sight to see.
The little mini ones?
The mini ones were cool too. There was also like a 37 millimeter gold, yellow gold with like this, I think they call it like sand crystal dial. I mean, just crazy to look at. Like it just oozes luxury, oozes wealth.
Yeah.
AP is one of those brands where it's like, I wouldn't wear everything that they make, but you can certainly appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into making many of these pieces.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I really, really enjoyed. There were two watches that I really enjoyed. I did enjoy the remaster.
Yes.
Which I didn't think I would. But seeing it in person, it's very, very nice. I think they nailed it. The size, proportions. Sand gold does this watch justice. It's not quite rose. It's not quite white. Kind of goes back and forth somewhere in the middle. But it creates a lot of contrast with that blue dial. That really is nice because that dial mixed with the strap it can come off as quite cold, and the sand gold warms it up a lot. It's really, really nice. And I'll tell you what, I'm not crazy about ceramic typically.
Yes.
But the ceramic royal oak with the, I'll say, high contrast rose gold open work dial or lack thereof was exceptional.
Yeah.
Like this was amazing.
Yeah.
They knocked it out the park.
It's funny too. Just when you think AP is like showing you everything, they like come back with another one. And the coolest thing about AP, right? Some people can, say whatever they want about them, just kind of only producing like the Royal Oak, but they're able to, they can take what's already great and then recreate. They can like always cook up again. And, there was a time where everyone had a big beef with the offshore.
Sure.
And, people weren't happy about it. But now I'm pretty sure you're going to see that.
I think the offshore is back.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think they brought it back.
It feels like people are excited about the Royal Oak offshore again. I think even if you look at like their latest like marketing campaign that they put out, like, and it felt like it was geared towards like the offshore, right? It was like a beach setting. Everyone's wearing like a different variation of that watch. And it just feels like it's cool again. It's really expensive. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, I asked for the price and they told me, and I think it was like $40K. And I was like, whoa.
Yes.
So, definitely with where I'm at right now in collecting, not in the cards for me, but I can appreciate it from afar for where it is. And but no, they did an excellent job, and it's cool to see that they are trying some new things. I was admittedly very critical of the remaster initially, but I always think back to like a conversation that we had with our friend Yoni, where we were talking about like sometimes it's best to kind of just like not judge something immediately and just like let it sit, right? And the remaster is one of those watches where I did sit and I felt the same way up until I had the privilege to see it in person. And when you see it in person, it hits you differently. You're like, okay, I get it. This is a nice direction. This is also like a nice like taste or teaser into creating a dialogue that exists outside of the code and the Royal Oak offshore for people who are interested in getting into Audemars Piguet. and the fact that they also made it like a limited piece and they did it in this new precious metal that they've developed, I thought was like a really, really smart move, especially after seeing the watch in person. We'll share some footage of it. I did post a video of my visit. You can visit Instagram, and it's even on YouTube. You can see videos and photos of the watches. So shout out to AP there. Yes. They also released a new watch.
Yes.
I have it here, and I don't often reference my phone when I'm talking about watches, but this watch is a mouthful.
Yes.
It is the Royal Oak Concept Split Seconds Chronograph GMT Large Date. That's the name of the watch.
Yes. People were definitely in the DMs talking about it, and still one of those like love it or hate it moments.
I love it. I think the watch is dope. I mean, I'm a big fan of AP when they do these concept pieces because it is what it's supposed to be. Like the watch might be large. It might be, it might be loud.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Just in terms of like design, but that's kind of like what the concept is. It's a concept.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I think of like the Royal Oak concepts, this is like AP in their like atelier bag, right? They're making art.
Yeah.
Right. High horology art that's on your wrist. It's not for everybody. Certainly for me, just minus the price point. I'm into it.
Yeah.
I love it. I thought they did an excellent job. It's this new technology, Chroma Forged carbon. It's luminous. It's a crazy watch. And then you're getting from a complication perspective too, right? Split seconds chrono with the GMT. I don't often see, I don't think we've had a new GMT from AP in quite some time.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So there's a lot of like newness and freshness here. I thought the marketing was great.
Yeah.
People are going to feel how they feel. It's 2 thumbs up for me. I love the watch.
Yeah. I mean, and to that point too, right? Just operating that watch really can't be for anyone because it's going to cost a whole lot of money to service it if you screw that thing up.
Yeah, it is.
So, I think AP understands that, and they're in their bag and they're digging deep to go ahead and say, well, even to your point, right? The idea of the concept, like this is a space where we get to test those bounds.
Yeah.
The concept is, of course, in that Royal Oak family, but it doesn't.
It always feels different.
It always feels different.
It does feel like a different watch.
In design, right? Like it's very angular. The bezel always looks different. The the bracelet or that rubber, strap that they may offer, it's always different than what they would offer in like their general catalog.
Yeah, and then it's a concept piece, so it's like a supercar on your wrist, right? So this is a watch for
price point too.
Yeah, I mean the price point's out there, but it's also for someone who I think really enjoys complications, and that's why I said it is a watch for me. If I could afford that watch, I would buy it in a heartbeat because I love comps. It's and the cool thing about it too is, it's like I enjoy like when Patek does complications. Patek really is rooted in tradition in a way that AP isn't. AP to me today is more so about kind of breaking those traditional rules, right? And doing things that's a little outside of the box, where Patek plays it safe. And so I love them both for different reasons in the field of complication, right? With Patek, it's like because it's done in a very classic and a traditional way, and that's really cool for what it is. When AP does concept, it's like they're purposely trying to introduce high complicated pieces to a more diverse, youthful, fashion forward demographic. And I think that in itself is an incredible undertaking to make high complicated watches cool.
Yes.
Right? Like Patek doesn't do that.
No.
Patek is like, if you know, you know. AP's like, well, if you don't know, now you know.
Yes.
And I think that's an awesome undertaking. So shout out to them.
Yes.
Shoot, ready for the shoot. Yo, man, what you doing?
I'm bidding on watches on getbezel.com.
What you bidding on?
Yo, don't even worry about it. I just want to watch.
What you win?
Listen. I just told you. Go to getbezel.com or download the Bezel app at the App Store. Don't worry about it.
I was in Detroit recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I went to Detroit originally for a CP time event. Shout out to Al and CQ.
Yes.
And my homie Carlos, who ran this one. We were in Carlos's neck of the woods.
Yes.
Down in Detroit in the D.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first time in Michigan. I gotta say, I really enjoyed myself. Not only because of like the people and everything that we did out there, but Detroit's a fun city.
Yeah.
They got a lot going on. The people are cool. We ate good. We went to the Joe Louis restaurant, which was pretty tight. Yeah, we had an event. Shout out to Out of Office Garage and our friends at Formex. We had an event with Formex.
Yes.
And shout out to Marcus, who brought some really, really cool watches. And that was it just turned out to be a really great event, as it always is. The community got to handle some Formex timepieces. And it was just like the perfect like combination, because this place, Out of Office Garage, had like all these like really, really expensive and cool and obscure sports cars. And Formex is a brand that was like inspired by like motorsports.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they even have a suspension system built into their watches, which is like super cool. And it was just like the perfect event, car enthusiasts, watch enthusiasts mingling together and checking out timepieces, checking out cars. It was a lot of fun. There'll be some footage that goes out of that very soon.
Yes.
But before I headed out there, I was actually reached out to by a gentleman named Philip, who works for Shinola.
Mm-hmm.
And Philip reached out and he watched the pod, just hit me and was like, yo, if you're ever in Michigan, like, we'd love to have you stop by.
Yeah.
And I was like, funny you should say that.
Look how things work.
Happen to be heading to Michigan in like a couple of weeks. And so he organized a factory tour visit for us.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to our friend James, who joined us. CQ and Al was there with his son.
Yes.
And so I didn't really know what to expect. Definitely familiar with Shinola as like a lifestyle brand. They make amazing, high quality goods. They have a store here in New York in Tribeca that I love. You always go in there and see really cool stuff.
Yes.
I know for a long time, their record player was like highly coveted. And I've always known that they made watches. And I think the Runwell is a really cool watch. And so I didn't really know what to expect, but I was like, all right, cool. This will be, fun. And it's just one of those things where you're always pleasantly surprised when you step into the world of one of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And for several reasons, I'll say first, just how they welcomed us in and the culture of the company. It was like just really, really, really cool. Just a couple of guys really down to earth, love watches, love design, love goods. And we spent like the first 30 minutes just kind of like geeking out in their design studio, just checking out all the stuff that they were working on, seeing samples of watches, putting watches on wrist, and
things they've done in the past.
Sorry?
I said things they've done in the past.
Yeah, even like checking out some like past projects and stuff, and that was cool. And it's always interesting to see like where a company like that, where their mind is.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of like, all right, we know what you're doing now, but where are you guys going? And we got to check out some really cool stuff. I will say there's a watch that they're releasing sometime next year that I'm incredibly excited about. I can't share what it is, but if you do go and watch the video that we shot with them,
you can get an inclination.
There will be signs. When they explained to me that this is what they were doing, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool, but like, brands do stuff like that sometimes, and it's not often executed well.
I was going to say that.
I got to see a prototype of this piece, or I'll say pieces that they're working on, because it's more than one, and they nailed it. They knocked it out of the park. I want one. I will have one. They they killed it. They crushed it.
Yeah.
I know it might not be all the way finished. They're going to tweak it a little bit, but they did an amazing job. And, you know, I think it's going to be well received.
Yeah.
Additionally, they kind of took us around their headquarters. We got to see like their leather cutting department, and we got to check out like a bunch of like old advertising and go through like some of their like heritage stuff and things they've done in the past with like the Great American series. And but then we got to actually like suit up and go into the sort of assembly plant and check out like their team actually in-house assembling watches, testing watches. And I have to say it was very, very impressive. You know, even, you know, not just looking at like them doing this all in-house, because they do it all there in Detroit. So if you buy a watch from Shinola, it was made there by one of the people that was there with us.
Yes.
Right? When you look at like all of the people that they're employing from within the city, and giving job opportunities to the community, but not even just like giving, but like teaching them like skills, like a whole new set of skills that they might not get anywhere else.
Yes.
And it was just really, really impressive. And what Philip is doing there, I think, you know, he's someone whom, like, speaking with him about the brand and how forward thinking he is. You know, they developed their own show. It's called The Movement. And they have like celebrities, rappers, comedians come to Shinola and like try to assemble like a watch.
Wow.
And it's hilarious. And they have Royce the 5'9" on there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You know, really pleasant experience, all around great brand. I will be buying a Shinola. They won me over.
Yeah.
It was just awesome.
It's funny because you beat me to the punch on a lot of heavy points. And I think the first one to tackle is these are all made and assembled in America.
Yep.
You talk about design, you talk about leather making, you're talking about the cutting, you're talking about people that are putting these watches together. It's all done in Detroit, right? Where we've been able to see positively the impacts that they've had on the economy there.
Yeah.
You know, they really have tapped into the American lifestyle because they go from these luxury products to them providing jobs, but then also tapping into sound and music and then embracing the culture. And I think, you know, from talking about AP to then going into Shinola, it was the great appropriation because they actually appreciate these things and they do it right.
No, they do it right. You know, this brand was rebuilt out of a vision of being able to go into an American city and show people that you can create jobs in this country for Americans, and that you can also give those people skills, cultivate and develop talent, simultaneously make good product and be successful at it. You know, Shinola sells.
Yes.
They have a cult-like following. It's very easy for them to continue to win over people because the product speaks for themselves. They make really great stuff.
Yes.
And you can see it on the people's faces. Like there's a really like incredible like sense of pride that people take working there. Even with Philip, and I'm blanking on our other friend's name who was there too. He's a designer there. I don't want to mess up his name. But I remember talking to him, and as he's like telling us about the product and what he's working on, the smile that was on his face. I was like, dude, you love your job. He's like, I'm in heaven. I was like, how long have you been here? He's like, 13 years.
Wow.
I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's a cool company. I'm glad that they reached out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to do some more stuff with them because, you know, that's a brand that after the experience that I've had with them, I would be looking forward to working with them even more closely because I believe in the same things that they believe in.
I'm glad you said that because I know we're going in on this, but something that I really wanted to tap into, And I'm sad that I didn't get to go on that trip, but I'm sure I'll be on the next one. Something that in your explanation of your trip to Detroit, right? It reminded me very much of what it is like in Geneva in terms of how you're able to provide skills to enrich the community. And it's the same as like, the designers that you met in Shinola to, the watchmakers and designers that we've met in Geneva, right? Like these guys are devoted to this skill and this talent. And it's very different from, the hustle and bustle of New York City where like someone doesn't work a job longer than 2 years. Like if you're at a job in New York City and you've been there for probably more than 5, they're like, wow, like you must really like your job. And sometimes the response is like, I hate my job. But, you have, America where everything is fast paced and, there's so many notions of like what people believe it to be. Visiting a company like Shinola, it's not that.
No.
And then, when we visited Geneva, right, which is the mecca of watchmaking, right, we see how happy these people are there.
Yeah.
It translates to that can be the same on our home soil as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's an impressive operation when you look and see like how many watches they're producing like within a few minutes. It's like, I think for like the quartz watches, they produce one quartz watch, like finish.
Yes.
Every 7 minutes.
Wow.
It's like crazy. And then with the mechanical watches, it's a little bit longer, but like not that much longer. But I think they're doing somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 watches a week.
Wow.
And they're so nimble enough in terms of how their manufacturing facility is positioned that they can crank up or scale down at will depending on demand. So they know how to like ramp it up. They also know how to bring it right back down. Wow. And it's just an impressive operation. I mean, for anyone who likes like supply chain or like logistics, like the guy that we were with that gave us a tour, like you have to love that job. He's in love with that job.
That's amazing.
He's in love with it. It's crazy. So shouts out to Shinola. That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I can't wait to go back. I had such a good time in Detroit. And I was only really there for like a day and a half. It wasn't very long. I got to spend some more time there. But I told them we'll definitely be back to shoot something with them out there. And you'll meet the guys because they're coming out here for a wind up. So yeah, they're sponsoring our friends at Warner Wound for wind up. So they'll be there. And I think they're actually doing something with Bryn in at the store. They have like an announcement or a release that they're doing with Dime Piece. So that'll be fun. Next item on the list. I got a hot take.
I was going to say hot take.
I got a hot take. And maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I don't think I am. I know that a lot of people are going to hear this and they're going to think I am. But I saw a new watch that was released. Not groundbreaking.
Yes.
It was a Girard Perregaux Laureato in rose gold.
Yes.
And I think most people were just like, great, another Laureato. And it dawned on me as I was looking at this watch. Now, this is a watch I've had the opportunity to wear before. I know the folks at GP very well. And I had the opportunity to wear a Laureato Chrono for several weeks on loan, which I enjoyed. The Chrono is my favorite steel version of the Laureato. I think it's an amazing timepiece. So comfortable with especially the white dial with the Clos de Paris, those contrasting black subdials with that like blue treated outer ring and hands. Awesome.
Yes.
I enjoyed it very much. I haven't really spent a lot of time with their time onlys in steel, not for me. But they released some time onlys in rose gold. Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the photos and it dawned on me. The Laureato, in comparison to some of the more popular steel sports watches, integrated sports watches, that it is a derivative of. We know that DNA. Design-wise, in my opinion, a superior watch.
Hot take.
It is a hot take.
Yes.
A lot of people hate GP.
Yes.
They hate GP.
Yes.
I happen to like GP.
Yeah.
I have a vintage Girard Perregaux. I love their old high beat movements. I have a gyromatic that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
Still to this day, one of my most accurate timepieces. Girard Perregaux knows how to make watches.
Yes.
If anyone doubts that, you're playing yourself. They get it. I've been to the factory. They're for real.
Yes.
Whether or not you like the Laureato, that's another thing. I have my opinions about you if you don't. I have my opinions about you if you don't like the Laureato. And you're more than welcome to go back and forth with me. I'm not going to do it through text. Shout out to John, though. But, and speaking of John, John is actually a fan of the Laureato.
Yes.
He loves that watch.
Yes.
Our friend John Carter. Shout out to him. It's just when you think about, like, if you spend it, I spent some time with like a lot of different designers. And you think about, like, you know, establish design principles,
Mm-hmm.
employing symmetry, the use of lines, angles, circles. The Laureato is a flawless execution. You look at the chamfered edges on the bracelet, the shape of the bracelet, the taper. And there's something about that watch that hit me when it was in rose gold. And I was like, man, you know what? This watch really shines through in precious metal.
Yes.
In steel, it's a little more harder to appreciate. For some reason, it stands out maybe a little bit more in the chrono. It could just be, it's just a cool, sporty looking watch that I enjoy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at all of these shapes that are incorporated into this timepiece in rose gold, I was like, damn,
Yeah.
that's a sexy watch.
I agree.
It's nice.
I agree.
And it hits all of these like really subtle notes
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like play in my mind like music.
Yes.
And I'm like picturing the watch on my wrist and I'm like, yo, I would not take this off.
Yeah.
It's a fire watch.
Yeah.
Now, the only downside of it is everyone looks at it as like a derivative of another watch and be like, oh, that's just a copy.
So okay.
Please.
So please, I wanna do a Perry moment. I wanna take the air out the room because you're very good at doing that. I have to go on a history lesson tangent.
Please.
You know, we've sat down with GP and we know the guys at GP, so shout out to them. There's a bit of a hot take, right, to your point, in terms of what came first, who designed what, and everyone kind of like wants to say, well, this is a watered down version of this, so this is this and this is that. I think when you put a few of those integrated sport models in a row in a category, right? They don't really have as much of a story as the Laureato. And so when I think of the Laureato, from knowing the story of it, I think of royalty. The design was thought of in terms of the bezel was to be the laurels of, you know, the crown of the Roman Empire, or just like any kind of one of those kind of like crowning. And so that kind of like struck, and I kind of got it. You know, and we can expound upon that more, but I want to tap into the other ones. You know, when the Royal Oak was introduced, right? We get it. It was a disruptive watch.
It was super disruptive. Yeah.
Changed everything in the terms of,
and no one's taking that away.
Right? In
Royal
terms
Oak
of the quartz era, and they needed to make something that was just like going to shake things up.
Sure.
Which was amazing. But past that, it was just a business play. There wasn't really a story. And I think it was JCB that might have said, you know, when the Nautilus was released, right? I think it was in his interview with Yoni, shout out to Yoni, when JCB pressed Gerald Genta about it, he came up with like this amazing marketing story, which is so funny. He goes, JCB's like, yo, man, what's up, man? You make this watch that looks like our thing. And he goes, no, if you take the Royal Oak into the ocean and you leave it in the water and it just runs over and you leave it for 1,000 years, what you get is the Nautilus or the Aquanaut or whichever one it was. And JCB had to step back. He goes, man, this is genius.
Yes.
Whether it was a play to kind of get out of the sticky situation
Sure.
is what they did to create it. But even still, unless you're like a historian or even dive into the history, right? You don't even know how, why, or even how this was created.
You don't, but if you do know the history, you knew my man Gerald Genta was a hustler.
He was hustling. He was hustling.
Yes.
Genuinely, there was no
Slinging designs to everybody.
and they all got the
all
same
takers
thing.
welcome.
They all got the same thing. IWC got the same
Yes.
thing. You know, Patek got the same thing. AP got the same thing. And the Laureato was the only watch that Gerald Genta did not touch.
Facts.
Which people believe that it was a Genta design.
They
and
did. I mean, it definitely, it has that DNA, right?
Yes.
No one's here to take away from the fact that it's definitely like, it was inspired by the Royal Oak.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
But
whether they want to admit it or not.
yeah, and who cares? Like at the end of the day, it's not to say, you know, that I think they both can exist.
Yes.
Right? Like one is, call it what it is, an original, the OG.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is another designer's perspective on reshaping that.
Yes.
And improving different aspects of it. No one's here to take anything away from AP. AP, we're fans of, make incredible watches, know how to make incredible watches, very high complications, right? Amazing finishing. But guess what? So does Girard Perregaux.
Agreed.
They do. If you've been to their factory, you're familiar with any of the other watches outside of even the Laureato, the Three Bridges for one, the Constant Escapement Force, like they know how to make watches and highly complicated timepieces, right? Luxurious timepieces. And the Laureato to me is just a designer who was influenced by one thing and saying to themselves, I know how to improve upon this. And here's my perspective. And Nautilus is great. Royal Oak is great. I even like the Ingenieur.
Yes.
It's fine. I even like the Crator. With the Locomotive.
Locomotive.
Dope watch.
Yes.
The Laureato, for me, closest to perfection. The Laureato is like, it's like Dr. Dre touching your beat.
Yes.
And it's just like, yo, let me just fix the drums.
Yes. Also, too, no, 100%.
100%.
And to that point, you know, as we've frequent Geneva, we sit down with a lot of guys that cross-pollinate, right? And, you know, we sit down and we go to these dinners and you know, after a few bottles of wine, right, you start giving up the secret sauce.
Yeah, they give up a lot, actually.
So, you know what I mean?
Stuff we can't repeat.
Stuff we can't repeat. But, you know, I would have to assume in the late 60s going into the 70s, right? Everyone is looking to figure out how they're going to reach the next best thing.
Sure.
And so you can see these guys sitting down with Genta, right? And just being like, oh,
but we know too that like, if you sit in a room full of designers, what do they always say? They say it's good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yes.
Right? Like designers are influenced by one another.
Yes.
They all steal from one another and think that they can do a better job at improving on any one particular thing that someone else did. This is the nature of design, right? Is to improve upon things, right? If you look at the very first chair, is it the best chair? No, right? There are better chairs. There are different chairs. Sometimes it's not even about being better. It's just a different perspective on what this thing is or what it could be, right? Now, I'll say this. A lot of people out there have opinions about the Laureato. Most of them have never worn one.
Yes.
I know many collectors that own a Nautilus, a Royal Oak, and a Laureato. And you know what they all say? Love the Royal Oak, love the Nautilus. Laureato has the most comfortable bracelet.
Oh, agreed.
They all say that. And they all still proudly wear a Laureato. They're not wearing it trying to say that this is better than the Royal Oak or the Nautilus, but they wear it and they enjoy it.
Yes.
Right? chances are most of them will probably wear it someplace they don't want to take the Royal Oak or the Nautilus, but that's fine. They still want to wear something they like. You know what? You look at it and you go, it's a nice watch.
Yes,
Laureato's a nice watch.
I agree.
Rose gold, good job.
Yes. When you put it that way, I think you got a solid point.
I think I have a solid point too. And I want any smoke with anyone who thinks otherwise. Come on the show.
Yes.
Bring it. I'm just not going to text back and forth with you.
Yes, we'll do a WCP debate.
Yeah, we could do that. We might have to have Josh and John here. That could get sticky.
Woo!
See what we can do.
Yes.
That takes it from me.
Yeah, this was fun.
This was fun. You guys know where to find us. This is another episode of WCP Weekly. We're at Wrist Check Pod on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify Audio and Visual, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, new website coming soon, but don't be afraid to visit wristcheckpod.com. You can catch all the new episodes there. We still have a couple of shuttles for sale. Shout out to those who have been buying some of the last ones. I think I only have 10 left.
Yeah.
So 250 units almost gone, guys.
Yeah.
But we do have some other things in the works coming. Additionally, we have our new network that we launched, Super Niche.
Yes.
You see the hat. You might have seen some photos from the event in DC, which was a lot of fun. So there's a lot more on the way in store for you, and you guys know where to find us. So
yes.
We'll see.
You know what I was going to say? You could probably find us in the bungalow.
You can definitely find us in the bungalow. So we do have our on Instagram online chat group. It gets kind of spicy.
Yes, it does.
So if you're sensitive, is not the place for you.
Not for the weak.
It's not for the weak.
No.
But if you want to join the WCP bungalow, just reach out to Rashawn or myself, and we'll send you an invite. All are welcome. Not many stay. It gets a little rough in there, but it's all in good fun.
Yes.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Peace.
Deuces.